Welcome to the next step for NFTs.
Sorry, my
25 minutes.
let them give you the
What we're
contact
going to do is we are going to, as the title suggests, deep dive into the NFT, the three-letter word topic. We'll do a little bit of just looking back, just to get a little bit of context in terms of the market and some of the lessons from that. But predominantly, what I want to do is kind of look forward in terms of where we see NFTs moving as use cases in general, but also specifically within gaming and gambling. And then also just touch on how NFTs relate to the metaverse and how those two technologies kind of play together. So I'll let my panelists give a quick introduction to themselves. Elizabeth.
I'm Elizabeth Smits. I'm a part of the iGaming team actually. I work in marketing, it's my boss there, but I've been a big enthusiast of the Metaverse since 2019, and I think compared to the other panelists, I'm more on the other side of the Metaverse. I know more from the consumer side because I am a consumer rather than own my own company. So, yeah.
Great. Look forward to that perspective. James.
I run a company called Vegas City, which is a metaverse district in the metaverse of Decentraland. And was a creator of the NFT set of NFTs that corresponded to like ownership of land leases in the metaverse.
Cool. We'll touch on that in a bit more detail in a minute. John.
Hi, I am John Gordon. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Incentive Games. So we're Incentive Games are the #1 free-to-play game supplier in the industry. So typically what we do is a free-to-play game. It's a Bet365 manager. A reason for the user to go back every day to play a free-to-play game, and then they can go and enjoy the other products on there. And I personally had a side project with a fund where I raised some money and we bought some NFTs and we were looking into how we can take what Incentive Games did into Web 2, into the metaverse and such, so a daily free game on a piece of land where people would congregate, survive to the end, and then give some betting products and decide that was our vision. So it was a bit of my side project in a fund, buying and selling NFTs, including board games, and just my experience around some things we'll bring to the table today.
Cool. Look forward to that. Jonathan, you're back-to-back panelist.
Back-to-back.
Welcome back.
Yeah. My name is Jonathan. I'm co-founder at Weave. What we do is NFT consulting. We really help give a native Web3 perspective to help brands find their place in the world of Web3. So that means community growth or even more specific things like tokenomics.
Cool. So as I said, I thought it'd be quite useful just to get a perspective from the panelists in terms of, I would say probably, NFTs have kind of existed. I know some of them go back further, but let's say over the last 5 years. So kind of from the early days of, the rare Pepes and the crypto punks through to what I think many would kind of consider the beginning of the kind of bull run for NFTs around kind of 2018 to 2020, let's say, so the crypto kitties, DCL, the arrival of OpenSea, the crypto art scene, and then through to last year with the incredible explosion in NFT hype and prices and sales revenues, driven in part by play-to-earn gaming. Axie Infinity, I believe, still remains on the top of all-time sales in terms of sales kind of revenues. The PFP phenomena with Bored Apes and also kind of representation groups, the rise of kind of worldly women. So there's a lot there, but I'm just kind of curious if you agree with that kind of chronology, if you like, and what you think some of the interesting learnings might be out of that. Who wants to go first? Jonathan?
Yeah, I'll jump in. I think we're still at the tip of the iceberg. There's so much more to explore. I'm actually really curious to see the future beyond speculative assets. You know, let's see the government break into the world of NFTs. I recently was living in Mexico and I met this woman. She lost the deed to her house, and it was a piece of paper. And now she's really at risk of losing her property because of it. You know, and that just seems like such a ridiculous thing in this day of age, when you could be holding an NFT, you know, and that lives on the blockchain. Obviously, there's could be privacy issues, but you know, there's a lot to be explored in that realm as well.
I think there's been a lot of growth in the area in the last few years, and I suppose everyone in this room is probably an early adopters. We're looking to see what's next, how we adapt this technology. I think, having done it two-footed myself and having my own fund and such, there's a lot of things you need to avoid out there. And I think fundamentally there's some key things need to change really for us to take it to the next step. Even just the way that an NFT project would raise funds, just like humans getting money early, promising a project roadmap. It typically doesn't work with the way humans work. If we get the money up front and there's no accountability, a lot of the time it doesn't work, even if you get the best intentions. So I think there's been a lot of rug pulls out there, and there's been a lot of blown up cases where they raised a lot of money and they didn't pull through. But I think unless we really address the fundamental, the way that it's structured, we need a real solid foundation where to build upon. Because obviously I think everyone in this room believes it's going to be the future, but there's a big gap there. We need to really rethink how it's structured, because without that, it's quite difficult to build upon.
So you think the kind of the intrinsic financial component to NFTs is created as it has?
Yeah.
A lot of, and I say, whether it's well-intentioned or not, projects not fulfilling, people losing money, etc. Do we think, clearly there was a huge hype last year. Do we think that need be the case? I mean, clearly they are a financial instrument because you can trade them. But the ridiculous prices that we saw last year, is that really sustainable?
I think it's what we've been seeing over the hype is really probably more the proliferation of sort of digital collectibles that can be genuinely owned, whereas the NFT, like the concept of an NFT, is really a data that's ownable, not specifically pieces of art or an in-game item. It could be anything. It could just be, it says it could be a property deed. You can buy an NFT which is backed by a diamond, and that diamond is unique, and the NFT stores the property of that diamond. So I think that it's about getting that sort of a common understanding to move beyond the sort of headline crypto punks and so on. Looking at stuff like virtual land, or looking at Z1 for an example of a race horse ecosystem where you collect and breed and race horses, and there's real depth to it, just as much as depth really in many ways as actual horse racing. So I think it's that functionality that it enables, and I think it's getting the common understanding of that out there. And within that, I think the term NFT will disappear. I don't think that we're going to be referring to non-fungible tokens. I think that will be something that is more of a technicality.
We don't refer to internet protocols or even the internet necessarily these days. That's interesting. So I think it seems to be there has been a lot of hype around a common belief maybe that something is worth something, but actually an NFT can be worth something because it could be backed by an asset or an utility.
And the majority of people don't really understand that, because when we go back to 2021 with the NFT boom, how it happened even, we were in a pandemic, people had nothing to do, the world stopped, and we were looking for innovation and something new, and then people suddenly woke up and saw crypto. We're like, this is a new thing with a promising future. And it was closely tied with NFTs. And then, of course, you have Meta, back then Facebook, announcing their overall shift to the Metaverse. And they introduced their massive market to this relatively new concept, which was the Metaverse. and people just kind of went all in. It was kind of like the dot-com boom in the 90s, you know, they just put their money into everything they could find. And what resulted in it was that a lot of companies created NFTs with no intrinsic value because they saw the opportunity of just getting money. And the people, they thought that this was a legit quick money making scheme. And they thought that buying an ape will just make you rich like that. And so that resulted into people putting a lot of their hard-earned money and losing all of it and kind of blaming the industry that's saying that it's fraudulent instead of just admitting that it was an investment on their part.
So kind of pure speculation.
It was.
Yeah.
We were bored at home, right? It was COVID.
Yeah.
You know, we needed something to do.
True. So how does the industry move on from that? Because when you're in the industry, you're in an echo chamber, but if you take yourself outside of it, it has a bad reputation, right, NFTs. People just think it's a scam and you're going to lose your money, etc., etc. Probably for all the reasons that we've kind of discussed, but how does it move on now? You know, how does it overcome that?
I mean, ultimately, an NFT is a piece of data that's provably ownable. And that data could correspond to anything. So once that's, and the big software vendors, the Microsofts of this world, will understand that because they have products that are going to come and get swallowed up by this technology further down the road. So I see the likes of Microsoft and Google and Amazon producing products which basically leverage the best of NFTs, and it will be used widely. There'll probably be non-transferable NFTs used commonplace in corporations for, to represent someone's account, for example. So I think that we're just seeing the tip of the iceberg.
So do you see this as being the kind of then a movement with corporates kind of coming into the space? Because I think if you look at the Crypto Slam, which gives the daily, weekly, all-time sales of NFTs, there's very few actual, traditional legacy IPs. There's a couple of sporting ones, NBA Top Shots, I think Sorare's up there, but otherwise it's kind of created IP. Do we see that now being quite a dramatic shift over the coming years?
Well, I would just want to chime in a little bit where, just because you're using this technology doesn't mean you have to say you're using this technology. Look at Starbucks. They just launched their loyalty program, but they didn't use NFT anywhere from what I saw in their press release. These are called journey steps. And that's a great example where even I use my email every day, but I don't need to know how it works, and that's the reality that we're in, right? And so I think more of these big box brands, big names are gonna come in, but maybe they won't use these terms. Yeah. Because when you get outside of your Twitter micro bubble or NFT NYC or even sometimes this room, people are saying, oh, you're destroying the planet. But they don't know that Ethereum just moved to proof of stake. They don't know these sort of things. They just know what the news has told them.
And I think there's company, and we're in the gaming industry, so we talk about that a bit as well, whereby there's companies in America that was one of the big 3 or 4 gambling companies that's just gone all in. You've got an NFT consultant with a space on the website, they just throw everything at it. And then you've got other companies, so a couple of my companies, Bet365 or FanDuel, are being a bit more measured about it. They say there's no need to just, scare everybody in the world by saying, oh, we're doing NFTs now. Just have to think about it. Where are you trying? What are you trying to achieve? If you want to introduce it, do it in a more seamless, measured manner rather than just, oh, we're doing NFTs now. We've got this NFT advisor, the go space on the website, and just get there. Like for instance, net gaming, 8 slot machine. So they're using a bit of IP, using a bit of Web 2 in it, sort of gradually, sort of getting there. I like that sort of approach.
And that was integrating it into the slot, was it? You could
so
win it.
They bought 4 board apes, mutant apes, sorry, and then used that IP and just replaced the images with those. And it was a nice way to get into it. And the companies can then say, we're using this or using that rather than scaring everybody off the cuff. And I think if we do it in a more measured approach, solid foundation, we'll get a lot more credibility than just, oh, we're doing NFTs now. What does that mean?
Yeah, no, which makes sense, and I think that kind of we've just got to be there. Kind of FOMO is beginning to die down.
Yeah.
I'd be interested to know kind of, so utility is kind of a word that's used a lot within the space. What sort of utility do we think is going to be kind of become mass market? And I guess also what kind of utility will become prevalent do we think within gambling?
In my opinion, I think it would be life-altering if we would move from financialized asset NFTs into more social relationship of trust NFTs. And here I'm talking about SBTs, soul-bound tokens, which are non-transferable tokens. So basically, when we have a decentralized market, we don't have such a basic thing that is built on trust like we have in our current economy, which is contracts. House leases, degrees, passports, and everything, they are still on paper, but they have extreme value. So if we would shift our focus to use NFTs for that function, we would have digital passports, digital degrees, and all of that which could not be faked, nor changed, nor stolen, or anything.
So kind of a validation of your
Exactly.
digital self
Yes.
for the real world. Yeah, I love the term soul-bound tokens. It's a great name for a token protocol. James, how is utility kind of displayed through NFTs and Decentraland?
A plethora of different ways, really. Decentraland, for those who don't know, it is like a tapestry of NFTs. The land, the avatars names, the avatars' clothes, even the movements are now all NFTs, and all of those have utility. But then it's, on top of that, it's what you program it to do. So, for example, one of the oldest utility NFTs in Decentraland is in a game called Wonder Zone, and it's basically the tools of the game are NFTs. So you can own a pickaxe, then you can own a better pickaxe to someone else. And the object of the game is to mine meteors that are falling out of the sky. And the more you mine, the more you can buy. It's an access token for the game. But then there's other NFTs in Decentraland. One of the ones in Vegas City represented the ownership of a block in a casino, and it's basically the NFT entitled you to the affiliate bonus on the tables that existed on that parcel. So effectively, you have like shards of a casino which were owned by there's 58 different NFTs that comprise the casino.
So does that mean you're getting a share of the?
You got an affiliate reward, so you weren't getting a share of the profit.
Yeah.
The operators effectively are paying you a rent on your little bit of space in the metaverse. And the different classifications of NFTs governed like how premium they were. So what floor of the casino this space was on was related to its value, because obviously the ground floor spot was worth more than like an upper floor, because you had the footfall.
Yeah, amazing. And John, can you see any of your gambling clients kind of entering the metaverse and potentially doing some of the use cases that James is currently using within Decentraland, or do you think that's too far away?
Yeah, so it depends. I think what I liked about what I see these days, like the McDonald's app or the Starbucks app, where everywhere you see that everyone's using their advertising for loyalty and rewards, and that's what incentive games do. So if you look at it where you can say, okay, if one of my clients' live score, if I can create a game where it brings the user back to the site every day to play a game, they get into this hook cycle and they come back, and we can increase the engagement by 50% sometimes, which they can then sell advertising space to. So rather than give the user, if they do something and predict scores or whatever it is, give them the cash if they get it all correct, give them smaller rewards that they collect throughout the year, and they can be in the form of NFTs, which would have a utility. So I think if we're looking at more of micro engagements where users are winning certain NFTs throughout the year and collecting things, that's sort of where I see it going in this industry. And it's just taking baby steps like that, where they're giving something that they're collecting. And if they get a full team or whatever it is, they can get free pizza or whichever it is. So I think that sort of utility reward mechanism would work. And similarly, what I've said on the gambling side, like I say, just baby steps again, just utilising NFTs, segueing through that way, through IP and such, rather than going full steam ahead at the moment.
Yeah, I mean, I think the loyalty scheme, as we know it, server-based, is ripe for Web3 technology.
Yeah.
Partly, I guess, because the functionality that the points can then contain, and I guess also the tradability of those points. So I suspect you're right. I suspect we'll see a lot of traditional businesses taking their loyalty schemes and experimenting with making those increasingly Web3.
And at this point in time, it seems like all these companies, that your engagement is the most important thing, the most valuable thing. So the loyalty scheme it doesn't need to be complex in front for the user. They just come and press a button every day and they do something, they get something. But in the back, it needs to be complex enough, but the user's nice and seamless and well thought out, so that it's not too complicated for the user.
And I guess it's something that the user, the mass market consumer, is very used to.
Yeah.
Right? We're not producing something completely alien to them. Okay. And Jonathan, from your clients' perspectives, utility, what sort of utility are you finding clients wanting? Are you recommending?
Yeah, they're trying to find value adds, to bring something new, to keep their customer engaged, right? We're living in an attention economy, so if you could use NFTs to keep your consumer base, coming back and maybe tapping or shaking or doing a little dance for free pizza, they like it and they want it. So yeah, I think it's really about trying to keep people's attention and adding value. I think it's really exciting with NFTs how you can add so much value. You can even create secondary markets off the value adds to the business. And thinking about utilities, there are certain NFTs that allow you to buy into investments. Well, or even get you into parties, right? Whatever it is. Well, what if you own these NFTs and you rented them out? Because you don't care about the investment or you don't care about the NFT. Well, you could rent that out and
monetize that.
And monetize that. So it creates a whole new economy on top of what you've built, and yeah, it'll keep people engaged.
So one of the big utilities in gaming in Decentraland, one of the big success stories right now is a thing called Ice Poker, which probably half the casinos in Vegas City run this game. And the utility is that you have to own the wearable for your avatar to play the poker game. But there's also the concept of delegation. So people will own a collection of ice poker wearables, and they can then delegate them to other players who then can play without owning one, and they pay 10% of their winnings to the owner. So there's people who've formed like a poker playing, guilds by, having a pool of people that they delegate their collection to.
Right, and we saw this in Axie Infinity as well, right?
Yeah. And actually, it's a good point because it's a double-edged sword.
It is, yeah.
Because it's also the sweatshop of the future.
Why? Explain that a little bit. So, I mean, Axie Infinity obviously had a huge traction in Asia.
Yeah. And there's whales that own huge amounts of Axies, and they have basically a sweatshop in Indonesia.
Delegating.
With very low-paid people grinding away at the game.
Yeah, I heard stories of people paying people on Fiverr, whatever it is, to go on Discord and say hi, GM, because they wanted to get these points on Discord so that they would be able to get an allow list spot to be an early investor in a project. But if you could use NFTs for this, well, you don't have to do the GM grind. As they say.
I'm just conscious of time, so maybe we just have a final question, which I guess is for this audience, specifically around kind of gambling and NFTs. Where do we see, we've kind of discussed marketing, probably predominantly, I think, around kind of loyalty, a little bit on product. But I guess there's other areas, that NFTs can be used within gambling, ID, etc. Where do we see the sweetest or the most prevalent use case for NFTs within gambling? Elizabeth, do you want to?
I think I'm not the most qualified for this question, to be honest.
Okay, no problems, James.
Well, I think one of the things we're looking at is using it as a promotional device. So, for example, we're making this like a play for fun roulette game. The competitors enter, you all get a chip stack, and then the person who's got, who has the most chips at the end of the time period wins an NFT, which is airdropped in their wallet, and that NFT would be typically aware of what they're doing in a decentralized. So that's incentivization. As a I suppose an elaborate form of a bonus in some ways.
Okay, makes sense, John.
I think what my idea of my project is going to be a bit of land in the metaverse, and then within that land, a Bored Ape Fight Club. So there's like a red shorted ape and a blue shorted ape. You can bet on which one would win. Maybe one's stronger depending on the dreary, and then on the outside of the land, a sort of 6 donkey race where you bet on which would win the race. So sort of using some of the metaverse, sort of rather than just coming to the metaverse to gamble on a blackjack table where it's a terrible experience, and you're trying to like, why am I doing it? Just do it 2D. I was trying to utilise how we could use the 3D version of it and make it a bit more entertaining, a bit more immersive. But I think there's a long way off until we sort of get to that.
And that would be real money, was your vision?
Yeah,
wasn't it?
real money.
Yeah.
Sort of just virtual versions of it, but in the metaverse.
I think there is enormous potential moving forward. I think once the kind of regulatory piece settles, you're not confined. You've got zero gravity environment in the metaverse, so you can kind of do anything. So why not reinvent the games that we've got? Jonathan.
Yeah, I mean, when it comes to iGaming, I see a lot of synergy between the two industries. Just one thing that comes to mind is that, how many countries can you easily top up your iGaming account? Whereas how many can you easily buy crypto with? Now, I'm not a lawyer, so I don't know about the regulations involved with that, but I think that there is a big opportunity there. You could easily reach a much bigger consumer base.
Cool. All right, we have run out of time, I'm afraid. So if you've got any questions, please grab the panel as we come down. But thank you very much. Appreciate it.